Flamingo Property Investing. Mate, it's been too long between chats.
It has been a while, man.
Bora for B Money. If you haven't seen his content online, you're living under a rock. It's very, very good content.
Just follow on your track, man. Try to be like you. Mate. Try to be like a slumlord you are.
Yeah, that's right. We were just chatting before we come on air, and you know, we were chatting about content, and I just said, mate, the reason your stuff's doing so well is because you're authentic, and it's fucking.
I think so, man. Because we were saying before as well, like people say, they'll see me, they'll see you, they'll say, oh, you do things differently. I'm like, really? I think we do things normally.
Yeah,
we do things. I'm me, you're you, and what you see on here is going to be the same person you see on the street. A lot of people are the opposite, I think. They try to be someone else that they're not.
And you're very open as well about like your story, about shit that's happened in the past, where, you know, a lot of people are very like fucking.
It's funny, man.
They push that to the side and they try
doesn't
to bring
happen.
some front.
Now, our stories, we've all been, well, not all. A lot of us have been through a certain patch, and some patches last longer than the other.
Everyone's got a story.
Yeah, exactly. You know, everyone's got a story. A lot of people do hide it, but our story's been quite interesting.
But I think the interesting thing about your story and like your journey to date is you've done a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And you talk about the shit that you've done, which is good, right?
Yeah.
Because lots of people talk about it with having no experience of actually doing it.
Exactly.
So what I want to run through in this episode is a lot of your clients are business owners. They're people with more complex situations. They're people who enjoy the finer things in life, like the cars and all the rest of it.
We've all been there.
100%. So what are you seeing at the moment? Were you just chatting before and you said there's not a lot of first home buyers. You're not seeing a lot of that kind of borrow in the marketplace, but you are seeing now a lot of that higher income.
Yeah, so first home buyers do exist. There's still a lot of them out there. But in Sydney especially, they're getting priced out, man. Like borrowing capacity, it's roughly 4.5 times your income, roughly, on a rough scale. So you're in 100 grand, you're borrowing 450,000. Now, what are you buying in Sydney for 450
Not a car
grand?
park in Bondi, that's for sure. I seen you did a video
$1
on
million, man, see that? I don't know if it's sold or not. You know, it's good promotion. Go park the car there and just do a video on that.
100%.
Do that.
Well, the apartment, the interesting thing about that, even though it's off topic, is the apartment, and you would know the apartment sitting there, right, on Not to Have. One better just sold in that building for $11 million.
Yeah, I know. They're starting at 10 there. So if you look at it from that point of view, it kind of makes sense. But everyday consumer looking at it, man, it's not going to happen.
That's a lot of dough. Yeah, so you're dealing with a lot of the business owners or the higher income earners in this point in time, because obviously to buy a property right now, you need
it's hard, right? Exactly, for sure. And servicing, when you're a company or a trust or whatever it may be, you can have, let's say a company, for example, use a 100 grand example again.
Yeah.
Company makes $100,000 profit and the director gets paid 50 grand. They got $150,000 income there.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can, if a company has car loans, for example, there's lenders that don't expense those car loans, so borrowing capacity increases. Where if a consumer is earning 100 grand a year and they've got 2 car loans, well, now they have to have 100 grand, deduct the car loan expense, their borrowing capacity decreases.
That's right, yeah.
Where self-employed or high-income earners who have property and use that income, for, rental income, so on as well, it increases the borrowing capacity further in the future. And
the interesting thing was, before I got into business, I always used to hear all these property investors saying, oh, when you're in business, borrowing's harder and it's much easier, much harder to get money off the banks. But since I've become a business owner, I actually think it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Like, it opens up more doors. You've got more lenders. You can use different products.
And you can do low doc products if you don't have financials, where if you're a consumer, as in PAYG, you can't. It's purely what your payslip is and that's it.
Yeah.
I think it is hard in the early first 6 months. Start a business today, in 6 months, it's hard to borrow. You have no financials. Your expenses are probably greater than your income, reality is, realistically. But as time
6 years in, it's still the same.
You're a slumlord, mate. But as time goes on and you have more financials, you have different income streams, and your company's now matured, correct. You get lenders that don't need any of that stuff at all. Accountants letter will do 1 year financials, 2 years financials, whatever. There's also lenders that allow you to borrow if you're paying yourself a salary.
And not even use the company financials, right?
Yeah. So if a company is trading, doing whatever, but you're paying yourself a salary, that's fine.
Let's actually go through that, because that's an interesting one that I actually spoke to someone about the other day. I was speaking to them. I said, I'm paying myself X amount of dollars. And I said, what about your proprietary limited? Are you profitable in there? And they said, no, it's running at a loss. And the reason it was running at a loss is because they had a lot of equipment finance in there, their own machines. So by the time they built in their depreciation and shit,
the bottom dollar is now negative.
Negative, yeah. So for someone who's in that situation, for example, running their own company, maybe paying themselves a really good salary, but not making any profit inside of the company, there's certain lenders now and lending products where they'll exclude your company and essentially just look at you as a PAYG.
Exactly. You might need a letter from your accountant saying, you can sustain the pay going forward and stuff.
Yeah.
But correct. So in that case, let's say they got 4 trucks, right?
Yeah.
4 trucks are 200 grand each. It's going to blow borrowing capacity out of any equation. But if you're paying yourselves a salary and we can not expense that, then it's a win-win in that case.
You can have the
company does its thing and you borrow personally as well.
And essentially you could increase your salary, 12
has to be
months.
Consistent, correct. But it is possible, correct.
Interesting. So why do you reckon there is that that misconception around business owners and being able to borrow money?
I think in the past it probably was like that. To be
Right.
honest. When like banks evolve over time, right? Like this, for example, paying yourself a salary. That's kind of a new thing. I think it's just maybe on a year and a bit old. Prior to that, you needed 2 years tax returns. They use the average of 2 years, all that kind of stuff. So things do evolve as time goes on. A lot of consumers don't know that, right? They still think, oh, I'm self-employed. It's impossible to get a loan. Well, no, it's not. It's actually very possible. We just got to have a look at it first, see how the whole situation looks. But if you want to buy a house today, or you start a business today and buy a house in 2 weeks' time, it's going to be pretty hard.
Unlikely. Generally, what a lenders want to see now for a business owner is it 12 months of financial, 12 months of ABN registration and GST?
At least, normally 18 months ABN even. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So within the first 2 years, you probably want to get up and running.
But really, that's probably what you want as a business. Like if you're starting a business today, you don't know what your expenses are going to be.
Yeah.
Like in your PAYG, you're earning 100 grand a year. Your expenses are this. You know exactly what's coming in and out.
Yeah.
When you start a business, you might earn, 30 grand in the first 2 months and then 0 for the next 6 months. So you kind of need that as well, just for your own sake, to need that also.
That's right.
But if you do want a house before that, you can get low doc loans, accountant's letter, all that kind of stuff as well.
And what does that look like? I mean, I've personally used those facilities before.
Yeah.
And the main reason we've used them is because you max out on your capacity with your actual financials.
Yeah.
And then you use your low doc.
So you can use projected income as well with the low doc letters. So when I say low doc, it's a letter from the accountant saying, you're projected to earn, or you're earning this much this financial year.
Yeah.
Tax returns aren't ready yet. That's fine. Normally a year behind in most cases. And they use that income going forward. So if you go with a main bank, which my main process is go with a bank first. Yeah. From a bank, go to a second tier lender, and if need be, go private lending as well. That's a bit different. That's not for everyday consumer.
That's when you're in the shit.
That's when you've resourced all options and you don't have anything else to do.
What about non-banks? You class them as second tier?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, second tier. Second or third tier lenders.
The interesting thing about business owners, and you talk about it a lot in your content, is the cars. Yeah. Most business owners are the ones you see driving the fancy cars. Yeah, you've had the cars before. I've
had a few. I've had 4 of them, and I think you've had a couple as well.
Yeah. I had one, and they got taken off me, the bastards. Please. What? Got impounded.
Mate, what are you?
Slumlord.
What do you mean got impounded?
70 over. Lost a license on the spot. They take your plates.
Wait, was this the one you were just telling me about, or a different one?
That's the one.
Oh, okay, right. Oh, you got impounded
I had the R8 before that. Yeah. I had GDR.
What did you have now you got impounded in?
McLaren.
Well, they impounded. They made a tow. We Hunter Valley.
They didn't tow it. They just took the plates.
How'd you get home?
I fucking drove that car back to the wedding venue.
Were you allowed?
Yeah, he said, because he said there's only me patrolling this road. He said I won't disqualify your license until 12. I got picked up at 11 or something. Yeah. Drive it back and don't drive it again.
So where's the car?
The car is at the wedding venue.
Still there?
And he has the plates, so they take it for 3 months.
And then
but if it wasn't there, and if it was in somewhere where we had service, and he could have called a tow truck.
Right, okay.
No good. So fortunately, if you ever get caught speeding it like that, folks, make sure you do it in an area where there's no service.
All right, plan ahead.
There you go.
What McLaren was it? What is it?
GT.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah,
cool. Good car.
Yeah.
It was a good car.
70 over, not bad.
Fuck, it's very easy to do, as you would know.
It is. And Putty Road as well.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous road.
It's a fun road.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, clearly too much fun.
Silly Jack, though. I shouldn't have done that. That was not responsible. But obviously, business owners are the ones that have these cars, right? They're not the PAYGs who are earning 100 grand a year.
Look, PAYGs who are earning very good salaries, some are earning,
people like doctors and stuff.
Yeah, correct. They're not driving Lambos.
Yeah.
They're driving a 5 Series Beamer or a Audi A8 or something like that, Range Rover. It's still very nice cars, but I don't really see them driving supercars.
They're probably spending max 400 grand on a car.
If that even, to be honest, it'd be less than that. The ones who are driving, in my experience, driving supercars are the self-employed, been around for a while. They've got property. They're using equity in the property to buy other properties.
Well, that's what I want to talk through. Let's talk through how we see that stuff, because it's really interesting to people. Yeah. Like, I know when I was a PAYG employee, I was like, fuck yeah, get 3 properties under the belt. Now I'm going to go buy the car. Yeah. But then what you don't realize is when you're paying for a car, that's 100 grand, 150 grand, 200 grand. With your after-tax income.
It's a lot. Exactly.
It's a lot of
people
dough,
forget the
right?
after-tax part.
It's a lot of dough.
Yeah.
So how do you see it with the clients that you work with and for your own personal experience?
So let's say for myself, and I've seen this happen with clients along the way as well. So when they buy, my goal has always been, as a little kid, I had the post on the wall and everything. I was that guy, I want to buy a Lambo, I want to buy a Ferrari, whatever it was. And I'd look at it, I'd say, how long am I going to get there? Now, the problem is people will look at someone like me driving a Lambo. What's the first thing you think?
Fuck, he's a sick cunt.
Most of these guys are a drug dealer, right? The tattoos, the beard, whatever.
Yeah. Doesn't mean he's not a sick cunt.
It's questionable as well. So people will see that. That's the first thing they think. I'm like, no, there's no way all these people driving these cars are
drug dealers.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of legit stuff in it. So what I found was, I asked, every time I saw your car, what do you do for a living? I still do it now. What do you do? What do you do? How do you do it? And then we start talking and stuff. So what I've seen over time is people who have these kind of cars, they have a few properties to back them up. It's not like they're living at home with their parents and going buying a Ferrari. That's not happening, right? They've got a property. They've normally got a business. They've got other properties. And what I've realized, once these properties have enough equity in it, and they have another property after that, and that has equity, and now got rental income coming in as well, maybe another one after that, then there's still enough what I call play equity, right? You got equity there, we can do whatever you want with. And buying a car with equity is not a wrong thing. You tell a lender, my intention is to buy a car with it. That's fine, right? It's not as frowned upon.
See, this is an interesting thing, people. Listen up, because a lot of people think it's like car leases, car loans. When you've got property behind you and you've got equity, which is essentially your capital anyway.
Correct.
There's smarter ways to do it.
Absolutely. So let's say 400 grand car loan. The repayments are probably going to be close to 10 grand a month, right? I don't care how much income you have. 10 grand a month's a lot of money.
That's right. And even inside of a business, that's 10 grand, most of it being post-tax as well.
Yeah, correct. Exactly.
Car tax,
for
right?
sure. That's right. Yeah, I think I said, it's tax deductible. Yeah, maybe, but still 10 grand a month, you're better off putting it towards other things. If you use equity in your house, I'm not saying it's the right thing or wrong thing to do, but it's an option regardless. You can use that equity to buy a car. Now you're paying, 1 or 2 grand a month instead.
And the reason for that is your equity loan is over a 30-year term, lower interest rate.
That's right. But now, people are going to say, oh, you don't pay a car off over 30 years. True, you don't want to, and you shouldn't. But how long do you keep your supercar for?
Well, I haven't kept any car longer than 12 months.
Yeah, they're always about 2 years, right? Yeah. These supercar owners normally keep about 2 years. So you just recycle it after 2 years. Yeah, you pay the interest on it, you get a bit of depreciation, but you're still in a better off financial position than you would be if you were to get a traditional car.
100%. Because you're borrowing equity from a major these days of what, 6.5%?
Yeah.
And if you went to a lender, for example, like what's a asset finance lender?
A traditional car loan, 8.5%.
That's right. So you're saying you're saving 2 percentage points. Plus, instead of having to pay it over 3, 5, or 7 years with a balloon at the end,
correct.
You have a 30-year loan term. You can essentially still pay the same repayments.
You can, and you pay it off in the 5-year loan term.
That's right. And
but you're not keeping the car for that long.
Exactly. It's usually a kilometre based, right? Like the reason I get rid of mine every 12 months is because I drive them.
I thought you got rid of it because you got repoed. Yeah, the car got repoed.
I've still got that car. It's just not allowed to be drived. The longest car that I've had is the RS6, which I've still got now, which will probably have for 2 years. Yeah. But it's all kilometre based. As soon as that car gets 15,000, 20,000 Ks on it,
get rid of it.
Yeah, I mean, because they're worth nothing.
That's what happens. Then someone else buys it, do the same thing. And what I've seen is normally 2 years. So myself, every supercar I've had it for max probably 2 years. Right? Yeah. And the math behind it is, okay, I'm going to keep it 2 years. I'm going to pay, say, 2 grand a month, whatever it may be. I'm still going to be better off doing that than paying 10 grand a month and financing it traditional finance way.
And then also the other thing, which I fucking worked out, is you go through these finance companies, because I did the first one like that, then you sell it.
Yeah.
And then they go, hey, just because you sold it in 2 years as opposed to 5 years,
by the way,
they charge you the early. It's like, what the fuck?
You owe us 30% of the remaining interest remaining.
Crazy.
Which is tens of thousands of dollars,
And then one of the cars I had to pay to get rid of it. So like I sold the car for more than what the debt was remaining on it.
And you still end up being behind.
And then I had to pay them to get rid of it, which I was like, fuck, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah. So there's smarter ways to do things. So again, I'm not saying it's the right and wrong way, but it's an option regardless. However, my overall opinion is still, nobody should get a supercar without having property first.
100%.
Like that, supercars aren't a necessity. Right? Okay, we're on it. We like it. We love it. But you got to look at the main goals. The main goal should be some kind of property, some kind of nest egg at least, some kind of secure thing that's going to be there forever. And then after you got the play money, use it then.
Exactly right. And play money, again, doesn't have to be cash sitting in the bank, right? Like if you would say it all the time, I say it all the time, people are sitting on millions of dollars worth of equity, right? Especially if they bought property within the last 10 years.
Yeah, correct.
Around Sydney, you bought something for 1, it's now worth 3, or you bought something for 800, it's worth 2.5. There's a lot of equity sitting there. And a lot of people are actually capped with borrowing capacity to go buy another asset, but they could probably borrow 200, 300, 400 grand.
Yeah, correct.
Which
again, I'm not saying you should spend it on a car. It's not the right thing.
You shouldn't spend it on a car, but this is educational, folks.
You shouldn't spend it, but you could. And look, I've done it. I know a lot of people who have done it. To be honest, any supercar owner I know has not done it, or maybe a couple have done traditional finance. Otherwise, they've used equity in property, commercial property, even their business. That's an expensive way as well, though. Yeah. It's got to be some kind of property, man.
And the way that I personally think about it is, let's say you have it for 12 months. Yeah. I always look at what do I pay for the car, and then what are the cars exactly the same as mine for 12 months old are selling for. And then I just make sure I pay down that amount of debt. So if I'm going to buy a car for 350, I'm likely to sell it for 280. I just know that over the next 12 months, I need to pay down that 70 grand.
Whatever it is, correct,
And that's what it's cost me to own the car. Yeah. It's expensive, but I guess another thing.
Well, any of the cars I've had, they've never lost that much money.
You must be a better buyer and seller than I am.
Maybe. So they've all been around the same range. So my last one, I bought it for 440. I sold it for 440 2 years later. So yeah, there was servicing cost stuff in between and that. I may be down maybe 20 grand, but 20 grand to own a car like that for 2 years, I'm all right with it.
It's cheap.
Yeah.
And then again, when you're a business owner, a lot of those cars get you into circles.
Yeah, correct,
You're doing drive days.
Well, that's another thing, right? So I'll see you driving a car, you see me driving, we don't know each other. I want to know what you do, right? Oh, your head's all over the internet. If it wasn't, I still want to know what you do.
Yeah.
Same way you want to know what I do. How's this guy afford that car?
Mm.
And you meet those people because they're all like-minded people.
100%. And
yeah, so it works out well. You're
chatting about a client of mine who you work in a similar facility to him. And
that's
the only reason I know him is because I went on
a
rally, a supercar rally. And regardless if you've got a $200,000 car or you've got a $1 million car, everyone's essentially on the level playing field,
exactly.
right? It's not like...
And they all want to know what each other does.
Yeah.
Because they're all still trying to get to the next level. The next level, where it doesn't end, right? But they just want to get to the next level. How did that person get there? I want to know and do it as well.
What clients have you seen, and I'm not specific names, but like, I'm assuming you start working with people in the early days of their business, for example, and then you've been in the game now for a long time and you've probably had similar clients for a period of time and you've just slowly seen those clients make more money, grow a business, buy more property. And the first time you did their finance to now looks very, very different.
It's pretty cool to see, man. You see the growth and we're growing together, right? So I'm growing in the business. They're growing in a business and at a personal level as well. We're growing all together. It's a good feeling.
How generally do you see that happen? Like, I see it with my clients. I haven't been in the game as long as you have, but like you see someone who starts on an X amount of salary or an X job and then you speak to them in 12 months time and they're like, oh, I've done this or I've opened this new office or I've done X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden they go get their borrowing capacity. They come back and they got a couple of $1 million and they didn't have that previous to that.
You see it often. You see, especially business owners who want to grow and they grow. Look, business is hard, right? But those who put in the work and they grow, there is growth there still. But what I see is the people who, it makes me feel real old, right? I am old. Where I've done a loan for someone and now I'm doing loans for their kids. I'm like, damn, am I this old now? I'm actually at this stage where I'm doing loans for their kids. I'm like, far out. So it's pretty cool seeing that stuff as well.
And is there commonalities that you see among a lot of these people? Like in terms of their traits or in terms of the kind of business, or is it just the
I think
fact
everyone's not scared of, those who have been in business for a while know it's hard work, right? It's not 9 to 5. Even if you are traditionally at work 9 to 5, you're still working until 9 at night and they're used to that. So they always have this work hard ethic. They know that, what's the word I'm looking for? Delayed gratification, right?
Yeah.
They know that what you do today is going to pay off in a year's time. So once they pass that first year and they say, okay, it took me a year to get here, now I know for the future what it takes. You see that stuff. They're not too focused on today, where a lot of younger people are.
They want to do the work today, get rewarded for it tomorrow.
Exactly, yeah. Where they know I'm going to work today, in a year's time it's going to pay off. That's how we learned that over hard way as well, I guess.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, it's the compound, right? It's we both do content.
Yeah.
The first video you post,
people laugh at
10 views.
People still laugh at it.
20 views, 30 views, and then you're getting tens of thousands of views and sometimes hundreds of thousands of views per video. But if you never started that first one, they got 10.
Exactly.
You would never got to the point.
How do you deal with people who talk shit about you online?
Oh, fuck. I used to worry about it. Now I'm just like, fuck. The more people who talk shit, I'm just like, fuck yeah, the more money I'm going to
Do you ever go through a pigeonhole and read the comments?
Nah. Never. Like, I read some shit and I'll reply every now and then as like a piss take, but like no one who is like level-headed and is a person that you would actually respect their opinion in real life ever comments on it.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean?
True.
Like, if I met any of those people in real life who were like, fucking scammer or like whatever it is, I'm like, dude, I bet you they're like dweeby little fucking, you wouldn't even talk to them, you know? And like,
but you know, the thing is like, we've all been those people. Yeah, we've all been the people they've seen someone online and said, look, this idiot, who does he think he is? But we want to help these people as well, man. Like, it sounds corny and cliche, right? Because all these people still want to buy a property somewhere. Yeah, you're not a con artist. I'm not a con artist. Or are you a con artist? You're not a con artist. Like, we can still help everyone along the way. It's just, but you do get a lot of weird stuff online as well.
It's all, I think the main thing is like jealousy and, you know, people.
Sometimes on especially on my personal page, the videos get, good traction. And they start reading the comments. Like, damn, this guy's going hard. Like,
but the more hate you get, the better it goes.
More engagement.
And I'm just like, fuck, more hate. And that's why, you know, there's like a methodology to content, right? Like the more outrageous some of the comments that you say or the things that you say are, or the more in your face you are, the better things.
What made you start it?
Content?
Yeah, like especially like TikTok.
Gary Vaynerchuk. Yeah, I was a massive follower of him for years before I got into the business. First hire was a videographer before I hired anyone else.
Yeah, okay, right.
And started content from day one.
Yeah, okay.
And I was just a believer in it.
Yeah.
And like, man, we got nothing off it for like 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
Like you get your people start to know who you are, but we weren't getting clients and shit off the back of it. And it's only probably in the last 18 to 24 months that it's really started to compound. And then you start to build.
And what do clients come in? So someone who sees you off TikTok, I can't see it being a 45-year-old man coming to you for a first time.
It's crazy. You wouldn't expect it.
But what's the kind of client you'd get off social media?
Mate, like business owners.
Yeah, okay, right.
Fucking high paid.
Yeah, okay.
Because first question all of my sales team ask, how did you hear about us?
Yeah, okay,
I
right.
see Jack's TikTok all the time.
Yeah, okay, right.
And that's something we couldn't believe because you have this perception of like socials, which is like TikToks for kids. Or like people who are...
I can't even say the word TikTok. It makes me cringe, man.
Crazy, man. I'm just all for it because I know that people who are on there are people who are our clients.
How old are you?
28.
So I'm older. I'm 42, right? I know I look younger, but I'm 42. I'll give myself a compliment. I was waiting for you to say it, but I'll give myself a compliment. Like social media is now the cold calling and the yellow pages of
100%.
Back in my days. I'm gonna say back in my days. We used to have yellow pages and stuff. And now like Instagram and TikTok is the new thing, right? I don't know how long it's been around for. So my thing is enjoy it while we can.
For sure.
Because the next thing that might come might not be that, right? Instagram might die off slowly or whatever.
It's all attention, right? Yeah. Like Yellow Pages was the same thing. It's like the more you spend on an ad and the more attention you get.
Remember the company names? AAA Building. It was always like AAA was the first one.
And it was the same when people built their websites originally, right? Because it was like ranked in that AAA in that way.
And it had some like 6 A's and stuff.
But it's the key to grow a business. The more attention you have, the more people know who you are, and generally a percentage of those people will want to use your services. Back to the business owner stuff. So business owners start their business. A lot of people don't want to pay any tax, so they run their businesses at a loss, right? I see that shit all the fucking time. But we know that, sure, if you have to pay 25 cents to the dollar on $1 million worth of profit, you pay 250 grand. That $1 million worth of profit gets you $6 million worth of debt. What's going to make you more money over time, right?
That's what people don't look at, eh?
So with the clients that you work with in this space, like, are they worried about trying to save a few bucks on tax?
Not a few bucks, but doing a bit of both. So when you got a fair bit of properties as well, you can also have negative gearing also on paper, depreciation, capital works, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So your taxable income can also actually be lower, but your assets are now greater. So that comes over time as well. Company profits, look, I'm all for borrowing higher, like, I don't like paying tax, don't get me wrong. Nobody really enjoys saying, I can't wait to pay tax this month, right? Nobody likes doing it.
Yeah.
But if you want to achieve goals, you're going to have to do that, man. Back to your question, $1 million, if you have $1 million profit, you can borrow substantial amounts of income.
Yeah.
And that property is going to, or those properties are going to get you a lot more than what the 250 grand in tax paid would have been over time. 100%. So people need to look at that.
And you can be strategic in business as well, right? Like let's hypothetically say you're going to have a bumper year.
Yeah.
You go and say, okay, well, based on this bumper year, I'm going to pay a bit of tax, but I'm going to go leverage up and buy a lot of property.
Yeah.
The following year, there's no saying that you can't write that income down, go and buy a lot of equipment, claim a lot of depreciation and stuff, and not have to pay the profit.
We can add depreciation back as well as income. That's another thing. So companies can have a lot of depreciation. We can add it back as income. That's not necessarily a bad thing either.
Yeah. So it's super fascinating. And do you see that a lot of business owners are buying property regularly, or is it?
They're people who can buy property are buying property when they can.
Right.
Whenever they can. So if it means regular, or once a year, whatever it may be, once every 2 years, when they can, they're buying.
Right.
And they want to be in a position to be if opportunity comes up, they're in a position to do so.
And what does that look like?
So again, back to equity, taking cash out as equity. We spoke about cars, but okay, that's the small minority.
Once they bought the limbo.
The cars are a small minority of it. But most people, if they're going to buy property, they'll release equity, have it sitting there in an offset account, interest only, paying no interest, no repayments, no nothing. And let's say a neighbour's property comes up for sale, they can jump on it straight away. So
they're essentially releasing their equity, putting it in an offset account, so it sits there as cash.
And interest only. So there's no repayments and no interest.
Unless you draw down on that money.
Correct, yeah.
And you're essentially just capitalising.
Yeah.
So when something comes up that you like, you don't have to start the process
Exactly.
again.
If it doesn't come up. But if it's there, it's ready to go. And most people, back to your question, when do they buy it? When the opportunity comes up, right?
Interesting.
So let's say your opportunity to buy next door, for example. It's worth more to you than it is to me. So you probably jump on something like that.
That's super interesting. And having equity sitting in a property that's not being used or not sitting there in cash in your account is essentially useless, right? A guy who's a bit of a mentor to me had this mega building company, and I learned this from him. When they were growing, super profitable, everyone wanted to give them money, investors, banks. They all said, no, we don't need it. Something changed in the business. They weren't doing so well. Then all of a sudden they needed the money. They
Right.
needed the overdraft. They
Yeah.
needed to go and leverage off the properties.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden their financials were fucked.
And the bank said, no, we don't want to do it anymore.
Exactly right. But they could have gone and did exactly what you said,
Yeah.
refinance some properties,
Yeah.
put the $1 million or the $2 million or the $500,000 of cash in the offset
Yeah.
account.
And let it sit there.
And then when times get tough, you don't
It's
have to
there.
ask anyone,
Correct.
right?
It's there to use. As long as you're not one of those people who see money and spend it, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like that. I got 100 grand there sitting there doing nothing. I go on a 10 grand holiday. I'll go buy some jewelry.
100 on the Melbourne Cup.
Yeah, things like that, right? So, hey, it might pay off. No, it definitely won't. So things like, as long as you're not that kind of person who will spend money if you see it,
Yeah.
it's a good option to have.
So having a little bit of financial discipline.
Yeah, for sure, man. You need discipline.
And then what about, most people talk about residential. Most people invest in residential.
Yeah.
Business owners, I think, are probably more prominent for going resi and
Yeah, correct.
commercial as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Especially now, commercial is evolving a lot now as well.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah, 5 years ago, you didn't hear about commercial, right? Now you got-
Never. Yeah,
there's
yeah.
commercial.
Scott
now you got-
O'Neill's been the man who's put it on the map from like a mum and dad
Yeah.
investor point of
Yeah,
view.
mum and dad. That's
Yeah.
right. Mum and dads are getting into commercial as well now, and that's driving up prices as well. Commercial's not a bad thing. The returns are great on it. The growth may not be there. The vacancy rates may be a bit more.
Yeah,
But the income increases per year and stuff as well. The rental income.
for sure.
But for business owners, what I'm saying, especially if they have some kind of business they work out of, and not some online, selling goods or whatever.
Yeah.
They'll buy a commercial property either in their self-managed super fund
Mm.
or the company, and then they rent it back off their own company.
So you see that a lot?
Yeah, we'll see that more and more as time goes on.
Interesting.
But the thing is not so far out of reach. So historically, commercial was like, oh, I can't afford that. I can't afford a 50% deposit, whatever
Yeah.
it is. But now you can use a 20% deposit. Or you can use no deposit if you have residential property as well. So it's getting easier as time goes on.
To be able to get into
Yeah.
commercial. And then what's generally in self-managed super, I did a video on this the other day, what's generally the max purchase price you see inside
Probably
of a
max property purchase price I've seen in this fund is probably 1.6.
Yeah, right.
But
Which
most, that's the exception. Most of them are normally 700 to $1 million, around that range for a purchase price.
Yeah, and the main reason for that is because you can't get the same borrowing
Correct.
inside of a super fund
Yeah.
that you could get outside of a fund, right?
Exactly. So the way a super fund is servicing on a self-managed super fund is, let's say your income's 100 grand, mine is 100,000. This is PAYG, for example.
Yeah.
And then the compulsory super is 11%. So 11 grand a year, you're getting paid super, as am I.
Yeah.
So that's $22,000 a year income, plus whatever rental income the property is bringing. That's servicing capacity.
And is it still about that 4.5 times?
Yeah, it is. But we don't expense other personal debts.
Right.
Right. So any personal debts, if I have 2 mortgages, you have 1, you have 3 car loans, whatever, we don't look at them.
So essentially the
The
self-managed super fund is just its own.
It's doing its own thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
correct. I like self-managed super fund. They're a bit complicated. Not every broker does them because
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, to be honest. And the lenders, the main banks don't do them. So
Yeah.
the smaller second-tier lenders do them only.
Like Granite and stuff like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, Granite, Latrobe, First Mac, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we do deal with them. It's very tedious going back and forth. They have to get a financial planner. They have to get an accountant to set up the trust and that as well.
Mm,
But I still think it's better than sitting in an industry super fund.
for sure. And you're obviously using leverage as well.
Yeah, correct.
Which, you know,
Yeah.
generally when
There's
people
also tax benefits and stuff as well.
because obviously being a business owner and having your own premises,
Yeah.
operating out of it
Yeah.
is actually allowed. Where if you're a normal mum and dad
Correct.
investor,
You can't. It
couldn't
has to
go.
be purely investment. But if you're a business owner, you buy a warehouse, for example, and your company is paying rent to a super fund, it's just your money going around in circles.
Exactly.
So I think it's a better option than
And then
sitting
your
in-
tax, obviously, inside a super is lower than
Yeah,
what it
correct.
is.
And you're getting tax deduction by paying that as well, paying your rent to the company also.
Interesting. Before we wrap, what's one interesting thing you've seen over the last 3 months inside of the finance world that has surprised you? Because you see a lot. I'm assuming you would see a lot
I
of
think
different.
the one most surprising thing is, which is also at the same time not surprising, I've been doing this, next year will be 15 years, right?
Wow.
I know, it's a long time. The
Started when you were
conversation.
15.
Oh, thank you. The conversation, regardless of what's happening in the market, regardless of the rates, the economy, the prime minister, anything, the question is always, what's the max I can borrow? That hasn't changed, right?
Mm,
So even though rates have gone up to, in the 6s now, they were in the 2s a few years ago. The question's always the same, what's the max I can borrow? I can't see that changing anytime soon. So what does that mean for property prices? Like, if rates go down,
yeah.
which looks like they're heading in the south direction, but if they go down, borrowing capacity may increase further. As borrowing capacity increases further, property price will increase even further than that.
Because people are still asking that question,
What's the max I can borrow?
That's
And now
right.
instead of borrowing 400,000, I borrow 450, 500,000.
which means they're not going to spend 400.
Yeah.
They're going to spend 450.
Or the person who
That's
can spend
interesting.
400 can now spend a bit more. So
I've
that
never
price will go
thought
up as
about
well.
that. That's interesting.
So that conversation hasn't changed ever. It's always been the same thing.
So people come, regardless if they've got one property or 10, and they
What's the max
always
I
want to
can
borrow
Yeah.
the max that they can for their next
And we
purchase.
tell them what they can. They're a bit disappointed because if you're only 100 grand income, it's pretty good, right?
It's good.
If I turn around and say you can only borrow $420,000, then I say, well, hang on, I'm on 6 figures. I'm on 6 figures.
And just for context, when rates were 2%, what could that same person borrow roughly? Not to the
So it was probably about 30% more.
Right. So
Yeah.
instead of being able to borrow, say 450, they could probably borrow
550 or so. Yeah,
to 600.
Yeah. So it's changed a fair bit.
Wow.
So what's gonna happen when rates come back down, or rates slowly heading back down?
Yeah.
Those people are now going to be able to afford more, and more buyers can now afford properties. The prices, in my opinion, will go back up.
And again, just for a context, this will make a good clip on Instagram. If rates go down by 1/4% or 0.5%,
Yeah.
let's say that someone's got $500,000 borrowing.
Yeah.
Roughly, what impact will that have on that person if it goes down by say 0.5%?
So I think I did the math on it before. I forgot what it was because it's been a while. I think for every 0.5 it changes,
Yeah.
it decreases by 5%. Yeah.
Right.
Or whatever,
Was that on $1
depending
million?
on the
I'm pretty sure I seen
Yeah.
that video. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on a $500,000 loan. Oh yeah, sorry, 5%.
If
So it'd be
it changed by
25 grand.
0.5%,
Yeah.
No, it changed by 5%. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So on a $500,000 lending, you'd be able to borrow an extra 25 grand.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's
right.
on point. If it's 0.5, but if it goes
Yeah.
down 1%, it's 100 grand. So or whatever it may be.
Yeah. So it makes a difference.
It does make a bit of difference, and I think that's what's going to drive prices back up, man.
And then the buffer rates as well. I've seen a few people like brokers and stuff
Yeah.
talk about this on socials recently about the buffer rates have been decreased in certain lenders.
Cases. So what a buffer rate is, anyone doesn't know. So if the rate is 6.5%,
Yeah.
the retail rate, the banks will assess it at 9.5%, add 3% on top.
Yeah.
So if you can afford it at 9.5%, you can afford it at 6.5%. But some banks, second tier lenders, for example, will reduce that buffer down to 1% on
Right.
purchases.
So essentially, it's like interest rates coming down
Yeah,
by
correct.
2%.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But also some banks allow you to refinance just with 1% buffer as well. So
Interesting.
if you're
let's
stuck,
talk to that actually, because that's so you essentially you could get debt with
Yeah.
a certain lender.
Yeah.
But you could get debt with a lender which will allow you to get debt with it
Yeah.
based on their buffer rate
their
for
service,
a purchase.
correct, yeah.
And then once you've got the finance, let's say it's a second tier lender,
Yeah.
you could refinance back to a major
After a year though,
because then the major looks at the refinance
at a 1% buffer. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Has to be after 12 months of good conduct and stuff. But yeah,
Right.
correct. So these second and third tier lenders, they serve a purpose, right?
So you can essentially use them to get the property
Yeah. And then look
and
at
then
options
pay a
afterwards.
slight premium for a short period of
Yeah.
time and
Which is
then
what we do.
refinance.
I recommend that if someone is going for a second or third tier lender, I tell them, hey, the rate's going to be higher, but the plan is this is in the future. Those can't miss any repayments and stuff. So if someone goes with a second tier lender and they're scared of paying an extra 1%, I get it. Don't get me wrong, I get it as well. But it's not a forever thing. It's a
Yeah.
short-term thing.
That's
Serves a
interesting.
purpose to get to where you need to get to.
Okay, there you go. The things you know.
Things you know.
Thanks,
you learn,
Roger.
we all learn.
Ciao.
Drive safe.
This is general advice and does not take into consideration your objectives, situation, or needs. You should consider if this advice is suitable to you or your circumstances, and please read any applicable PDS beforehand. This is a Henderson podcast production.